Welcome to Hiroshima. It's a city that forever will be mentioned on the darkest pages of human history. Because right here in this very spot where I'm standing, 80 years ago, first atomic bomb was used against innocent people. And so in today's video, we want to figure out what has become of this city ever since that historic day. Has radiation ruined this land forever? What happened to the families that lived here, as well as how do future generations even move on from such a tragedy? And of course, we're gonna start the video in the most famous and iconic spot that this city has to offer. This building behind me, it's called the Atomic Bomb Dome. And it is one of the only structures that even partly survived the explosion of 1945. The bomb itself, it exploded about 600 meters into the air and pretty much above that building. So the force of the bomb that came crashing to the ground surprisingly did not destroy the vertical posts and walls of this building. Each day, thousands of visitors come here to see this place with their own eyes and pay their respects. But this skeleton of a house is just a small part of the complex that can be found now in the historic center of this city. And as we arrived in Hiroshima Peace Park, for a short while, we felt a weird sort of relief. Okay, I must admit that part of me was expecting this place to look like a nuclear wasteland. Like Chernobyl, that we can't go back to, that's full of radiation, because the bomb literally went off right here, 600 meters above. But believe it or not, all of this area is totally safe, and for only about 2 months after the explosion, the radiation levels around here were dangerous and deadly.
That's the difference between an accident and an explosion, that when there's an accident, the chain reaction keeps on going. When there's a bomb, the chain reaction is meant to be instantaneous, very strong, and then stop.
But this relief didn't last long, because with every step forward, we learned more of the terrible events that took place right here. This monument here is dedicated to all the children that were lost in this tragedy.
This is the burial mound where they gathered ashes all around the city who had been the victims of the atomic blast. And this does choke me up a little bit, because I can't imagine how many people are buried behind me. It's crazy.
The atmosphere made it easy to get lost in your own dark thoughts. And the park itself was filled with various statues and memorial stones. Here in Hiroshima, they estimate that the number of people who died was between 90 and 150,000. It's a big gap, and it just shows how little we know about what happened hours and days after the blast. But the purpose of this green space stretches far deeper than just to grieve. This peace bell is out here for everybody to strike, and when you do it, it shows that you stand against nuclear weapons. And this fire that's burning over there, it is said that they will burn it until the last nuclear weapon has been taken away from our planet, as a symbol of the people's will to want to get rid of this destructive weapon. The whole area is built so it teaches us about the horrific consequences of atomic weapons. There are museums showcasing grim and graphic materials that we simply cannot show here on YouTube. But to give you a small example, it just hits you in a weird way when you see a dark mark on stone staircase that represents a person that was sitting there during the blast. It's quite crazy to think about the fact that little boy, the bomb that was dropped here on Hiroshima, is thousands of times smaller than the hydrogen bombs we have today. It's hard to put in words. I just can't wrap my head around the fact how much devastation the hydrogen bombs can cause. And seeing this aftermath and destruction of nuclear weapons was more than enough to make us understand why we need to do everything in our power so that they would never ever be used again. Yet in our quest to understand how it affected local people and what has become of Hiroshima today, learning about the events of 1945 was just the first step. So now we're gonna go ahead and continue our journey and try to see what this city looked like before 1945. Yet straight away we ran into a problem. You see, traditional Japanese architecture mainly uses wood and paper-like material called soji to build houses. Yeah, the walls are paper. And this meant that the bomb pretty much vaporized and burnt the whole city in just minutes. But luckily, there's a place nearby that wasn't damaged by the explosion, and so this was where our route was headed. We have made it to the Hiroshima Island, and many locals call it Miyajima, which literally means Shrine Island, and there's a good reason for that. The reason being that most visitors come here to see the ancient shrine located behind a gigantic dory gate rising from the waters of Hiroshima Bay. And if you're wondering what is a dory gate, then pretty much it's a symbolic door, usually orange, that marks the entrance of a sacred ground. So if you walk through dory gates, it means that you're entering a sacred place. The area surrounding the gate and the shrine is truly magnificent. Even the animals here get along with humans pretty well, because violence and killing on this holy ground has been banned for centuries. First signs of this island becoming a tourist destination actually started in the year 1643, when a Japanese scholar made a list of the 3 most beautiful views in Japan, and this here is one of the views. So for more than 350 years it's been on a list of one of the most beautiful places in Japan.
And if you add Liisu, it's extra beautiful, but also with just a little bit of crazy.
But of course, the island is home to much more than just orange gates and friendly deer. Walking around Hiroshima Island is like nothing we have ever seen before. The architecture and style of this island, it's absolutely stunning. Wherever you look, there's a beautiful view. A mix of human structures and beautiful nature in the background. The people here live hand in hand with nature, just 100 meters away from the main street. Konnichiwa. It is full of quiet side streets, with markets and small restaurants serving local food. This region here is also known to be the biggest oyster producer in the whole Japan. So, like every second restaurant on the street is an oyster place. And then, of course, there are the temples. Unique in a ways that is hard to put in words. The red hats on the statues, they're so cozy. They look like a group of dudes just sitting together, belonging to some peaceful gang. Fantastic and mysterious, all at the same time. These are the cutest baby Buddhas I've ever seen. But as we continued, a seed of sadness started sprouting in our hearts. Because as you can probably understand, that beauty we saw here was all taken away from Hiroshima. And so once the tide started to go out, slowly revealing the Torii Gate from the sea, we took it as a sign to leave the island behind and to also reveal to ourselves what has become of the city that was destroyed. In present day, there's about 1.2 million people who live here in Hiroshima, and now we're gonna try to see what does the city look like now. As we entered the new center of Hiroshima, it looked like no other city in Japan. The historic part that's very common in many other Japanese towns and cities just doesn't exist here that much. But the contrasts we saw were a lot different compared to what we had expected. The streets are wide, the buildings, well, they're all new. You see, by 1955, in only 10 years, the city had been entirely rebuilt. But this time over, it was made so it perfectly fits the needs of modern Japan. In no way am I trying to say that having your city destroyed is a good thing. But more often than not, if you see places that have gone through war or destruction, they've been rebuilt much more efficiently and much more in tune with the current times. And if we leave out this one crazy looking bog. Okay, this thing looks like it's taken straight out of a apocalyptic nuclear war scenario. Then Hiroshima today is much more organized compared to other places in Japan. Its wider and more centralized streets make moving around the place easier for both cars and pedestrians. There are many parks and green spaces built into the modern designs. What do you think of the first atomic blast survivor that we've seen?
That tree is stronger than I will ever be.
700 meters from here was the epicenter of the blast, and this tree here is still standing. And even the entertainment streets are very busy and filled with colorful Japanese culture. But of course, when it comes to local people, then without a doubt, such events leave scars that are passed on through generations.
For example, in Japan, when a person has cancer and they offer chemotherapy versus radiotherapy or like radiation therapy, then in Japan most people choose chemotherapy.
And I'm sure all of us have heard about Godzilla, and Godzilla is also the aftermath of nuclear explosions and tests in the Bikini Atoll. The legends and myths of sea creatures mutating, they became so common that now Godzilla still to this day is a huge part of Japanese culture and beliefs. Yet despite all of this, they've done everything in their power to move on, and it was a relief to see this city thriving. We tried its famous foods, okonomiyaki, meaning like make your own or choose your own pancake. There's so many layers to this dish, like you start with the dough, cabbage, noodles, seafood, bacon, now in goes the egg, like and how it's served and eaten is that the plate on the side where you're sitting is warm and they put it in front of you, so you have this thing, cut it to slices, and you can just slowly, piece by piece, enjoy it, and your food stays warm the whole time. Sweet, tangy, sour, everything at the same time, and I haven't even made it to the filling part. It was super delicious as well, like such a good food.
Yeah, I liked it as well.
And as the hours passed, we started to understand why so many tourists come here each year. Together with Miyajima Island, they make a wonderful vacation spot. One of them is a big city, you get the shopping, you get the city vibes, and then you're out here in a green island. One of them has like history and the past, and the other the future. But much more importantly, to us, Hiroshima will always be a testament to the resilience of Japanese people. They have lived through some of the most horrific events that humans have ever done to each other. But instead of giving up or looking for revenge by developing their own atomic weapons, the locals have turned their thoughts toward a brighter future. They rebuilt their nation in the matter of years. And ever since the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Japanese have decided against all programs to develop their own atomic weapons, and instead they spread their peaceful and anti-nuclear policies all around the world. It's kind of crazy to think that on 6th of August 1945, right here history changed forever. This here was the place where nearly 80 years ago the age of nuclear weapons started. And I truly hope that one day, with the extinguishing of this flame here, it will also be the place where this chapter of our history comes to an end.